Yeah, we are in the place of
Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to another installment of the Triple DT series. Now if you don't already know, this video is going to be on why what the average person considers a diet is actually bad for you. Now, before we get started into the video, let me just start by saying that if you're currently following any diet, whether it be keto, intermittent fasting, or anything of that sort, and it's working for you and is something that you can happily adhere to in the long term, then that is 100% fine. However, in my experience, nutrition and dieting is actually quite individual, and any issues I outline in this video is likely to not apply to every single viewer. However, I will mention that in my opinion, and based on the scientific data, there are more or less better approaches to dieting that I believe everyone should at least hear and understand once in their lifetime, given that the fitness industry tends to have very confusing and misleading guidelines for things like weight loss, muscle building, and overall health, since keeping the truth mysterious and nitpicking garbage scientific data is usually the best way for them to profit off tricking the general public into buying their supposed diet hacks and tips. And with all that information, let's get into problem number one with the average diet. So my first issue with dieting is that most fad diets like keto, paleo, or clean eating are typically too limiting to be actual, real, sustainable, long-term approaches to dieting. Like I've mentioned on my channel before, and I'll mention again and again until it's finally understood in the general public, as many times as necessary, no food is inherently good or bad, and no food independent of meal frequency or quantity is inherently harmful to you in any discernible way. What this means is that eating junk foods like chips, pizzas, ice cream, and so on is perfectly fine and will not cause any harm to you through your diet so long as these junk foods do not dominate your diet. Having such limiting views as to cut out foods that are high in sugar or that may be processed might work for some. However, doing so generally limits you from being able to eat out, eat on special occasions, or enjoy eating with friends and loved ones, given that not everyone is on your diet. And social gatherings, more often than not, have foods that most diets would cut out. And if you cut foods out like this and eat according to the recommendations of every diet, all you'd be left with is an empty plate. And so my final point on why I think these fad diets are too restrictive and can be bad for sustainability is that even the scientific data says that taking a flexible approach in which you're not restricting all these random food groups based off a fad diet will generally be more adhered to, produce better results in the long term, and even maintain better results after the diet is over. This means that you'll be less likely to rebound, which is a very common problem amongst most fad diets nowadays. And believe it or not, all diets, regardless of what foods you include or exclude, produce the same weight loss given that you maintain the same caloric deficit among all these diets, which is really all that matters when it comes to dieting for weight loss, your caloric deficit. Which leads me on to problem number two, which is that most of these restrictive diets generally lead to an unhealthy food relationship and can give misleading nutrition ideals that simply have no scientific backing. And I see this time and time again with friends and loved ones, frequently coming up to me and saying things like, "Oh, is that a pizza? I thought you were supposed to be the fitness guy. Don't you know that carbs cause fat gain and too many processed foods kill you?" Or they say something even dumber like, "Oh, is that Diet Pepsi? Don't you know that's all made out of chemicals, bro? You're gonna die." Which are all blanket statements with really no scientific backing at all. And the only reason they believe it is because they heard it that one time from this one fitness influencer. And a blanket statement like that is just as stupid as saying, "Oh, all Arabs are terrorists, when that's clearly not the case, given that I'm part Arab and I'm not a terrorist. Or am I? And anyway, having such baseless views lead to very serious health issues like orthorexia or anorexia. The same way that the baseless claim I made about Arabs earlier very often leads to harmful racism. And the fitness industry uses these blanket statements to scare you. Given that, yes, carbs do cause fat gain if you're eating them in a caloric surplus. And yes, eating too many processed foods can kill you, but so can ingesting too much of anything. That's why it's called too much. You can have too much water and die. So their statements are technically correct. And again, yes, Diet Pepsi is made completely out of chemicals, which if you had any fundamental knowledge in chemistry, you would know that everything is made out of chemicals, which is again why you shouldn't let these technically true blanket statements leave you misinformed. You shouldn't let these big fitness corporations trick you into buying their diet hacks based on their garbage, non-replicated scientific data. And hopefully, without sounding like a conspiracy theorist, I'd like to say that you should stop letting these big fitness corporations trick you into being a food racist. Come on, man. You're better than this. Which, again, is why flexible dieting is generally the best approach, since you are significantly less likely to major in the minor, or put the cart before the horse, if you will, since it's an all-inclusive diet approach with no baseless ideals. And it allows you to cure any cravings you have, since ignoring cravings more often than not leads to it becoming worse and you eventually binging. Which brings me on to my third issue with restrictive fad dieting, which is that restricting the food groups or specific foods you eat can very often get repetitive and bland. And for one counterexample, I've never gotten bored of the foods I eat, because I have so much variety and so many different meals that I love to eat and that have such great macro and micronutrients for weight loss, muscle building, and overall health that it's sometimes actually overwhelming. In fact, sometimes I can't decide what I want to eat because I have so many different recipes that taste great and fill my macros perfectly that it can be a bit hard to choose. And since I can include all foods in any meal, I get to experiment a lot in the kitchen, which brings fun back in eating. And with this quarantine, I've been spending a lot of time in the kitchen making tons of new recipes. And again, they all end up being very low in calories, very filling, have great macronutrients and micronutrients, which is something that restrictive dieting limits you from being able to do. In fact, some of my recipes are so nutrient dense and low in calories that even by the end of the night when my cravings are at the highest, I can just order a pizza or any other junk food from any store rather than making the healthier version at home, since I've saved so many calories in the day. And this allows me to not stress over having cheat meals like pizza and other junk foods. And when I want to fulfill these cravings, I just can without having any stress, which again, you can't do when restrictive dieting. And with all that information in mind, it's on to my fourth gripe with restrictive dieting, which is that these restrictive dieting approaches can lead to very serious health issues that aren't often brought into light when talking about dieting. For example, following a low or no fat diet can lead to very bad hormonal health, make you feel nauseous, and overall just promotes bad health as a whole. You need your saturated fats and sufficient fats generally in order to optimize your hormone levels for muscle growth, weight loss, and just good health. And for another example, following a low or no carb diet can lead you feeling the keto flu, which makes you feel very low on energy, can make you feel nauseous, impede your strength and performance in the gym, among tons of other health detriments of removing these carbs. And this is with carbs not even being an essential nutrient. And following a low or no protein diet can decrease satiety, increase muscle loss, detriment your muscle and strength goals in the gym, decrease bone health, and your overall health, and may even cause fat gain, given that you'll be losing the extra thermic effect protein provides. And overall, restricting your diet in any significant manner without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional can be very, very dangerous. And most, if not all, restrictive diets have no long-term benefits in comparison to a simple, flexible approach. However, they all seem to have possible health risks. So I just don't understand why you would choose a restrictive diet over a flexible, low-calorie diet. Which brings me on to my fifth and final issue for this video on restrictive dieting, or fad dieting, which is that generally all of them were designed to get you to restrict food groups in order to restrict your calories without actually following any caloric guidelines. But that's simply inefficient and in a lot of cases doesn't work, especially with individuals who are more obese, making people continue to get fatter. But now, congratulations, you're fat, but you don't include carbs in your diet. And them still being fat, but now missing a lot of foods they love, gets them to just give up on the diet and quit trying to be a healthier person, which I find is the saddest part of the fitness industry. Now, with all this information in mind, and to end the video here, I'm not saying that flexible dieting is the be-all, end-all, magic, infinite weight loss, indestructible approach. And I understand that simply restricting food groups can help people simplify nutrition and has helped quite a few people in the past. Which is why I started the video by saying if it works for you, then that's perfectly fine. However, in my experience, these wrong nutrition ideals have done more harm than good. And while they may help with weight loss, they don't promote good health. And you have to remember what seems to be a limitless amount of scientific data says that the only factor that produces weight loss is a caloric deficit. And you shouldn't worry too much about what you eat so long as you try and make sure your meals are balanced, which is why most effective diets only include you tracking your calories and tracking your protein, and optionally tracking your other macro and micronutrients. And instead of worrying about what foods are bad, just try including more fruits and vegetables into your diet. Also, try making more foods at home out of minimally processed ingredients. However, do not exclude the processed junk foods, given that they in no way detriment your health so long as they aren't the dominant factor of your diet. And lastly, don't be scared of so-called chemicals or artificial ingredients. If something like sodas scares you that much, all you'd have to do is simply Google the FDA's recommendations for artificial sweeteners. And with all that wonderful, freeing information in mind, I'd like to end the video here. If you didn't like the video, let me know why down in the comment section, or just insult me. However, if you did like the video, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, share the video, comment things that you'd like to see in the future and what you liked about this video, and maybe watch some of the other videos in my diet tips series, since all of these actions help the algorithm grow my channel and get this crucial data out there to the general public. Or if you just want to see more on my channel, click on any of the videos that are popped up here. And with that information, have a good rest of your day. Peace.